The modern economy is built on a hidden exchange. Your time for someone else's goals, your talent for someone else's gain, and your future for someone else's timeline. That is the essence of the salary trap. Not that salaries are bad, but that they condition people to stay exactly where they are. The moment your income depends on a calendar, an approval, a raise, or a promotion you don't control, your life becomes limited by systems you didn't design. In this audiobook, we will expose those systems. We will analyze why so many intelligent and hard-working people remain financially stuck, despite doing everything right. We will break down the traps that keep employees dependent, afraid to leave, and unable to build true wealth. And more importantly, we will explore how to reclaim ownership, autonomy, and financial leverage in a world that quietly benefits from your dependence. This is not a call to quit your job tomorrow. It is a call to stop outsourcing your future. The world rewards those who learn how to make money without asking for permission, waiting for a raise, or trading hours like a commodity. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Stop believing in job security. Job security is one of the most comforting ideas ever sold to human beings. It feels responsible, mature, and respectable. It feels like the reward for doing things the right way. You study, you get hired, you settle in, and life feels predictable. But predictability and security are not the same thing. In fact, predictability can be the very thing that blinds you to reality. You know when the paycheck arrives. You know how much it will be. You know what your manager expects. And because you know, you stop questioning. You stop exploring. You stop imagining alternatives. You begin to assume that as long as the paycheck keeps coming, life is under control. But the truth is that job security is only secure until someone else decides it isn't. It only exists as long as an organization chooses to need you. And that is not real security. That is dependency. The modern economy has replaced genuine security with a kind of emotional anesthesia. It doesn't make you wealthy, it doesn't make you free, and it definitely doesn't put you in control. It simply lowers your anxiety, enough for you to keep showing up. As long as you are calm and predictable, the system keeps running smoothly. And that's the important part here. The stability serves the system first, and you second. If restructuring comes, if automation becomes cheaper, if growth slows, if leadership changes, or if markets shift, job security disappears instantly. Notice that you have no vote in any of those decisions, yet they determine your future. That alone should make us rethink what we call security. True security is not having one paycheck. It's having the ability to create income without permission. True security is not being needed by one employer. It's being valuable to the world. And true security is not found in titles, promotions, or tenure, but in skills that scale beyond a single building, a single contract, or a single boss. When you rely on job security, you are relying on the hope that someone else will keep choosing you. And hope is not a plan. Hope is not a strategy. Hope is not control. This is why so many people are shocked when layoffs hit. They did what they were told. They were loyal. They showed up. They sacrificed. They believed loyalty would be returned. But employers do not make decisions based on loyalty. They make decisions based on math. And unfortunately, math rarely cares about how long you've been in the building. That's why understanding this early is a gift. The earlier you see through the illusion, the earlier you can start building assets, skills, and leverage that don't vanish when someone in an office decides to restructure. Here's the real shift. Stop valuing job security and start valuing income independence. One comes from dependency, the other from capability. One keeps you safe today, the other keeps you free tomorrow. When you make that shift, you stop asking, how can I keep this job? And start asking, how can I keep my power? And that question changes everything. Chapter 2. Break the time for money ceiling. Everyone starts their working life by trading time for money, because that's the only system we are exposed to as children. We learn that time equals pay, and more time equals more pay. Part-time, full-time, overtime, different names for the same transaction. It feels logical. It feels fair. But once you look closely, you will realize how limiting that equation really is. When your income is tied to hours, your income is automatically capped. No matter how talented you are, no matter how much value you produce, there are only 24 hours in a day. You can optimize, you can grind, you can wake up earlier, but the ceiling never moves. It's a mathematical prison disguised as responsibility. This is why so many hard-working people remain financially stuck. They assume the problem is insufficient effort, so they push harder, stay later, sacrifice weekends, or take extra shifts. And yes, hard work can temporarily increase earnings, but it never changes the structure. Effort without leverage simply increases exhaustion. And when exhaustion becomes normal, people stop asking why they never seem to get ahead. They tell themselves success just takes time, but time is the very currency they are running out of. The marketplace rewards value, not hours. This is why someone can make $2,000 in a day doing consulting while another makes $80 after an entire shift at a restaurant. Both worked, both contributed, both used time, but one used time as a multiplier, the other used time as a commodity. When time is a commodity, it is cheap and replaceable. When time becomes a multiplier, it creates leverage and opportunity. Companies understand this distinction very well. They do not get rich by trading time for money. They get rich by building systems, systems that work while they sleep, systems that scale, systems that produce value without needing additional hours from each individual. A business does not make more money simply by working longer hours. It makes more money by increasing leverage. Employees, on the other hand, are encouraged to believe that time is the only variable they control. Show up, stay late, cover the shift, finish the deadline. The entire corporate machine depends on individuals trading hours. But the owners aren't trading hours. They're trading leverage. The clearest proof of this is one of the simplest: you cannot become wealthy renting out your time. You can become comfortable, stable, or responsible. But wealthy, very rare. The people who achieve financial independence at a young age do not do so through more hours. They do so through leverage. Leverage through skills, leverage through products, leverage through capital, leverage through platforms, or leverage through systems. All are forms of income that continue to pay, even when you are not sitting at a desk. To break the time for money ceiling, you must first break the belief that time is income. Time is a tool, not a salary. Time should be used to create things that outlive the hour you put into them, things that keep working after you stop working. A course, a brand, a system, a skill that scales, a network, a product, an asset. When you build anything that can be used more than once, by more than one person, without requiring additional time per unit, you are stepping into leverage. The modern economy makes this even more obvious. Digital tools have destroyed the old barriers between creator and consumer. A single person can reach 1 million people in a day, whereas in the past, you would have needed a corporation to do that. Platforms have turned leverage into a possibility for ordinary individuals. Yet most people never take advantage, because they are trapped in the time for money mindset. They don't ask, what can I create once that benefits many? They ask, how many hours can I work this week? And that question ensures the ceiling never breaks. Here is the uncomfortable truth. If your income stops the moment you stop working, you are not in control. You are on a treadmill, and treadmills don't go anywhere, no matter how fast you run. Break the ceiling by using your hours differently. Use them to build capabilities that compound, not tasks that reset every Monday. Use them to build assets that work even when you don't. Use them to learn what the wealthy learn early. Money isn't made in the hour, it's made in the leverage applied to the hour. When that shift happens internally, everything about how you pursue income changes, because the goal is no longer to work more, it's to multiply. Chapter 3. Don't climb a ladder that leads nowhere. From childhood, the corporate ladder is presented as the natural direction of success. You start at the bottom, you work hard, you get promoted, you earn a better title, and eventually you reach the top. It's a neat little story that makes the journey feel meaningful. It gives structure, purpose, and an identity. But here's the uncomfortable reality. Many ladders don't actually lead to the destinations people imagine. Instead of leading upward toward freedom, they lead sideways into more responsibility, more pressure, and more dependence, with very little increase in actual autonomy. The higher people climb, the more trapped they become. An entry-level employee dreams of becoming a manager. The manager dreams of becoming a director. The director dreams of becoming a VP. And the VP dreams of not having to worry about the next economic downturn or corporate reshuffling that could wipe out an entire department overnight. The irony is that at every rung, the pressure increases while the freedom rarely does. You get better business cards, better email signatures, better seating arrangements, and slightly better salaries. But the cost is control of your time, your peace, and your optionality. Corporate promotions are psychological incentives. They feel like progress because humans crave advancement. We want signs that our efforts are being recognized. We want markers that tell us we're moving forward. A new title does exactly that. It gives meaning to the sacrifice. It makes the long nights and early mornings feel justified. But the financial impact of those promotions is often shockingly small. A 7% raise, a 10% bump, maybe 15% if the company is generous. Meanwhile, the workload increases by 30% and the stress doubles. The math never adds up in your favor. Another very subtle trap hides inside the prestige that titles create. Titles make people proud, and pride is sticky. Once a title becomes a part of your identity, I am a senior manager, I am a VP, I am the department head, your willingness to leave that identity behind decreases. You may not love the job, but you love what the title says about you. And companies know this. They don't need to pay significantly more if they can offer prestige as compensation. Prestige is cheaper than raises. Prestige is cheaper than freedom. And prestige keeps people loyal. Many people assume that climbing high eventually leads to safety. But upper management is where layoffs strike the hardest. When companies need to reduce costs, they target big salaries, not small ones. So the ladder that once felt like a path to greater stability becomes a direct path to vulnerability. The higher the salary, the bigger the target. The higher the title, the fewer equivalent roles exist elsewhere. Entry-level positions are everywhere. VP roles are rare. If a VP loses their job, they can't simply apply for 20 other VP roles the next day. The market doesn't work like that. So instead of giving freedom, the ladder increases dependency. There is another problem. The ladder is slow by design. It's paced to keep you in place. Annual reviews, performance cycles, incremental raises, multi-year promotion tracks. Meanwhile, the cost of living is not slow. Inflation is not slow. Life is not slow. By the time someone reaches the middle of the ladder, they often discover that the math of life has outpaced the math of salaries. So they start taking on more debt, more obligations, more responsibilities, which forces them to keep climbing because now they have no choice. The ladder becomes not a path upward, but a cage that locks them in. The real tragedy is that many people never stop to ask the simplest question: Where does this ladder actually lead? Does it lead to ownership? Does it lead to time? Does it lead to autonomy? Does it lead to financial control? In most cases, it leads to a nicer office, a higher workload, swollen expectations, and a lifestyle that requires the paycheck to sustain. That's not freedom. That's dependency, with better furniture. The solution isn't to reject ambition. Ambition is healthy. The solution is to stop assuming that every form of progress equals freedom. True progress is measured not by titles, but by leverage. Not by promotions, but by ownership. Not by prestige, but by optionality. If a ladder doesn't increase your options in life, it is not a ladder worth climbing, no matter how shiny it appears. Chapter 4. Reject the outdated 40-year plan. For decades, society has pushed a single default blueprint for life. Go to school, get a job, work for 40 years, retire at 65, and then finally enjoy the time and freedom you spent your youth sacrificing. This formula made sense in an era where expenses were low, pensions were reliable, industries were stable, and retirement was guaranteed. But that era is gone. The modern world has evolved faster than the plan itself, yet millions are still living as if the old rules still apply. They follow the script without questioning it, because the script is familiar. It feels safe. And anything that feels safe is rarely challenged. The real problem with the 40-year plan is not merely the time it consumes, but the assumption it makes about when you are allowed to live. It tells you that life is meant to be front-loaded with work and back-loaded with freedom. You sacrifice your prime years for your elderly years. You trade youth for security. But by the time most people reach retirement age, their bodies are tired, their ambitions are faded, and their curiosity has been replaced by caution. They wanted to travel, but now they worry about health. They wanted to explore, but now they must manage medication schedules. They wanted adventure, but now they struggle with energy. The reward arrives at the wrong time. And that's assuming the reward arrives at all. Many people never make it to the finish line. Some get laid off in their 40s or 50s and struggle to re-enter a workforce that favors younger and cheaper labor. Others burn out, fall ill, or deplete their savings long before retirement even begins. The idea that 40 years of loyal labor guarantees a comfortable future is simply not true anymore. Pension systems have weakened, inflation eats away at savings, medical expenses rise faster than salaries, and social safety nets shrink every year. The economic foundation that once supported the plan has quietly eroded. Working the same job for 40 years also assumes that industries remain stable and predictable. But we live in a world where automation, globalization, and technological disruption are rewriting entire sectors in real time. People are being displaced, not because they made poor choices or lacked skill, but because the rules changed while they were busy being loyal. The old plan never accounted for that. It assumed that loyalty and consistency were enough. They aren't anymore. The 40-year plan also produces a subtle psychological trap. When someone commits to a long timeline, they naturally delay gratification. They convince themselves that the present is merely preparation for the future. They avoid risk, avoid change, and avoid experimentation because they don't want to jeopardize the plan. But avoiding risk for 40 years doesn't lead to safety. It leads to stagnation. Life becomes a waiting room. People wake up one day and realize they spent decades postponing the things that mattered most to them. The irony is that the old plan was created during a time when people had fewer choices. There were fewer paths, fewer opportunities, and fewer alternatives. Today the opposite is true. There have never been more ways to create income, build leverage, start something of your own, or design a life that doesn't require waiting until 65 to begin enjoying it. Yet despite these new opportunities, Many remain mentally chained to the old blueprint, not because it works, but because it's familiar. Familiarity feels safe, even when it's outdated. Rejecting the 40-year plan does not mean rejecting work. It means rejecting the assumption that freedom must be delayed. It means rejecting the idea that your best years must be used to fund your later years. It means restructuring life so that freedom, exploration and autonomy are integrated along the way, not postponed like a reward. The goal is not retirement. The goal is ownership. Ownership of your time, ownership of your income, and ownership of your choices. The sooner those forms of ownership begin, the less you need to rely on hope at the end of the journey. The old plan asks you to wait 40 years for a life you could start designing now. The new world rewards those who build their future instead of waiting for it. The question is not whether you should work hard. You should. The real question is, are you working hard for a life you want, or for a plan that no longer works? Chapter 5. Escape the comfort that's keeping you small. Comfort feels harmless. It feels warm, predictable, and safe. Comfort tells you everything is fine, that nothing urgently needs to change, that tomorrow will look like today and that's okay. And for a while that message is soothing. Comfort is the psychological equivalent of a soft couch after a long day. It feels earned. But comfort has a cost. It keeps you still. It keeps you settled. It keeps you from questioning whether fine is actually good enough. And often fine becomes the enemy of better. The modern salary system relies heavily on comfort to keep people in place. A steady paycheck, predictable office routines, scheduled raises, paid vacations, health benefits, and holiday bonuses create a cushion that makes staying easier than leaving. You don't have to love the work, you just have to tolerate it. You don't need to thrive, you just need to avoid failure. The problem is that human beings rarely grow inside tolerance. They grow inside discomfort. Discomfort is where skill expands, where courage develops, where opportunity becomes visible, and where possibility is discovered. Comfort hides those things. Comfort makes the cage feel like a living room. People don't stay in jobs they dislike because they lack intelligence or ambition. They stay because leaving requires facing uncertainty. Uncertainty feels threatening. We fear embarrassment, financial instability, judgment, and the unknown. And when fear and comfort collide, comfort usually wins. Fear keeps you from moving. Comfort keeps you from questioning why you haven't moved. And 20 years pass before you realize what was lost. That is how comfort becomes a trap. Not by hurting you, but by never challenging you. Comfort also dulls hunger. When you have just enough to feel safe, you stop fighting for more. You stop exploring alternatives. You stop asking bigger questions like, what do I really want? Or what could I become if I pushed harder? Instead, people ask smaller questions like, how do I get a 7% raise? Or how do I make my manager happy? Or how do I avoid getting laid off? The horizon shrinks. Instead of asking how to build freedom, people ask how to keep the comfort alive. But comfort cannot produce freedom. It can only produce maintenance. Maintenance is survival, not growth. There's another layer to this trap. Comfort creates dependency. When the paycheck always shows up, when the office always needs you, when the work always fills the day, it becomes easier to let life slip into autopilot. You don't need to learn new skills. You don't need to take risks. You don't need to build anything of your own. And because you don't need to, you don't. Dependency grows quietly. Before long you realize you don't know how to survive without the very thing you once told yourself you could walk away from at any time. You may not love the job, but you are bonded to the stability it provides. That is not freedom. That is captivity, disguised as comfort. Now here's the twist. Comfort becomes most dangerous when it feels deserved. When someone has worked for years to reach a stable position, the idea of voluntarily stepping into discomfort feels irrational. Why start over? They ask. Why risk what I have? But starting over is often not the real risk. Staying still is. Comfort sedates ambition until the window of opportunity closes. Markets change. Skills age. Energy fades. And the dreams that once felt urgent start to feel unrealistic simply because too much time passed. Breaking out of comfort is not about burning everything to the ground or quitting your job tomorrow. It's about reintroducing discomfort into your life, deliberately. Not recklessly, deliberately. Discomfort can come from learning a new skill that makes you more valuable. It can come from building something of your own after work. It can come from networking, starting a small business, creating content, or offering services. It can come from saying yes to opportunities that scare you. Discomfort is not the enemy. Discomfort is the doorway. If you truly want a life beyond the salary trap, you must normalize the feeling of stretching yourself. You must normalize uncertainty. You must normalize experimenting. The reward for doing so is not just money, it's freedom. You learn that your value extends beyond the comfort zone you were trained to stay inside. And once you experience that, comfort is no longer seductive. It becomes unacceptable, because you'll realize that comfort may keep you safe, but discomfort is what makes you alive. Chapter 6. Stop letting debt control your life decisions. Debt may not feel like a trap at first. In fact, it often feels like opportunity. Credit cards, car loans, mortgages, student loans, installment plans, and buy now pay later schemes allow you to have things earlier than you can afford them. The modern economy encourages this because debt creates consumption, and consumption keeps the machine running. But underneath the convenience is a powerful form of control, financial, psychological, and behavioral. When debt accumulates, choice shrinks. And when choice shrinks, freedom disappears. Most people don't go into debt because they are irresponsible. They go into debt because the system is designed to make it feel normal. Housing is expensive. Education is expensive. Medical bills are unpredictable. And lifestyle expectations are inflated by advertising and social pressure. People don't finance cars because they love debt. They finance cars because modern life makes it socially uncomfortable to not have one. They don't take out student loans because they love paying interest. They take them because they were taught that education equals opportunity, even if the math no longer supports it. Debt becomes a default setting, long before anyone recognizes what it costs them. And here is where it connects to the salary trap. Debt doesn't just cost money, it costs freedom. The more debt you carry, the less optionality you have. You can't leave a job you dislike when you have monthly payments waiting for you on the first of every month. You can't take risks when you are servicing loans that punish inconsistency. You can't slow down, pivot, learn, or explore, because your bills don't pause. Debt forces stability, and stability forces dependency. Employers don't have to trap people. Debt does that for them. Debt also increases tolerance for misery. When someone hates their job but has no financial obligations, leaving feels possible. But when someone hates their job and has a mortgage, car payments, student loans, credit card balances, and lifestyle inflation to maintain, leaving feels impossible. They tell themselves they'll stay just a little longer, but a little longer easily becomes 10 years. Debt does not steal your future all at once. It steals it month by month. Another subtle effect of debt is how it shapes identity. When you owe money, you begin thinking like someone who owes. Every decision is filtered through risk avoidance. Can I afford it? Replaces, is this the right path? Life becomes transactional instead of intentional. When you are indebted, you think in survival terms instead of opportunity terms. And when your mindset becomes survival-based, you stop playing to win and start playing not to lose. And no one builds freedom by playing not to lose. The hardest part is that debt often grows alongside income. When people earn more, they don't usually become free. They increase their expenses. They upgrade apartments, cars, gadgets, wardrobes, vacations and social expectations. It feels like progress because it looks like progress. But progress measured by consumption is a trap. The system rewards this pattern. Banks offer bigger credit lines. Dealerships offer longer payment plans. Real estate agents push affordable monthly payments. Everyone benefits from you owing, except you. Escaping the debt trap is not merely about paying things off. It's about changing how you relate to money and time. Because debt isn't just financed with dollars, it's financed with years. Every loan delays your autonomy. Every payment delays your freedom. The question is not, can I afford the monthly payment? The real question is, what is this taking from my future? A cheap payment can be expensive when measured in years of life. There are three forms of freedom debt blocks: the freedom to leave, the freedom to build, and the freedom to take risks. If you cannot leave a job, you cannot negotiate powerfully. If you cannot build something of your own, you cannot transition out of dependency. And if you cannot take risks, you cannot access opportunities that require temporary instability. Every financially independent person understands this instinctively. They protect their optionality. They value being able to say no. Breaking free from debt does not require perfection, just direction. It begins with awareness, then discipline, then restructuring. You reduce what you owe, avoid new unnecessary liabilities, and shift energy toward assets that generate returns instead of bills. The goal is not simply to be debt-free. The goal is to regain control over your decisions, because once debt stops dictating your life, something remarkable happens. Options reappear, and with options comes power, and with power comes the ability to design a life, not just finance it. Chapter 7. Don't depend on your employer for survival. One of the strongest forms of control in the modern economy is dependency. When you depend on one entity for your paycheck, your healthcare, your benefits, your status, your routine, and your financial identity, you are not choosing stability, you are surrendering power. Employers understand this dynamic far better than employees do. A dependable employee is valuable, but a dependent employee is immovable. They will tolerate environments they dislike, roles they have outgrown, and cultures that drain them simply because they cannot afford to leave. Dependency becomes the leash that keeps otherwise capable people from pursuing alternatives. The system encourages dependency by bundling life essentials into employment. Health insurance, retirement accounts, paid time off, parental leave, sick days, and bonuses are positioned as benefits, but they are also forms of psychological glue. They make walking away feel expensive, irresponsible, or even dangerous. What will you do without health coverage? How will you pay for emergencies? What about your pension? The fear creates inertia, and inertia is one of the most powerful economic tools ever invented. It keeps productive individuals locked into a single income source for decades. Dependency also distorts negotiation. When you rely on a job for survival, you don't negotiate for what you're worth. You negotiate for what keeps you safe. You don't ask for raises boldly. You ask for raises timidly. You don't challenge unfair demands. You comply. The thought of losing income becomes scarier than the thought of living below your potential. In this way, dependency trades ambition for obedience. And the tragedy is that most people don't realize how deeply this trade-off shapes their life until late in their career. The system further reinforces dependency by rewarding loyalty just enough to make staying feel rational. Yearly raises, holiday bonuses, performance reviews, and occasional promotions serve as breadcrumbs of progress. They create the sensation of movement without ever offering true freedom. It's like pushing a treadmill forward. You feel motion, but you never leave the room. Many employees mistake these breadcrumbs for growth because they have never experienced independent control over income. They compare themselves to their peers instead of to their potential. The reality is that depending on a single employer for survival is one of the riskiest financial strategies a person can adopt. It violates one of the most fundamental rules of wealth: never rely on one source of income. Investors diversify to reduce risk. Entrepreneurs diversify products to reduce risk. Corporations diversify markets to reduce risk. Yet employees often stake their entire life on a single paycheck. One restructuring, one economic downturn, one leadership change, one merger, one algorithm, one pandemic. That's all it takes for decades of loyalty to evaporate. To break out of dependency, the first step is internal, shifting identity from employee to value generator. When you see yourself as someone who produces value rather than someone who occupies a job, you begin to think differently about income. You start asking better questions. Who else could benefit from what I know? How can I package my skill? How can I serve more than one customer? These questions open doors that salaries cannot. The second step is external, building alternative income channels. Not necessarily big ones at first. Small streams that create optionality. A freelance project, a consulting offer, a small business, a digital product, an investment strategy, a skill upgrade that increases market value rather than just corporate value. The goal isn't to replace the job overnight. The goal is to weaken the employer's monopoly over your survival. The third step is strategic. Detach essential life infrastructure from your employer. When healthcare, savings, retirement planning and emergency funds are independent of the company, leaving becomes a choice rather than a crisis. When you have savings, you negotiate differently. When you have options, you work differently. When you have leverage, you live differently. Dependency makes you manageable. Optionality makes you powerful. And power doesn't come from quitting. It comes from not needing permission to design your life. The day you stop depending on one employer for survival is the day you stop renting your future and start owning it. Chapter 8. Make your skills scale beyond one paycheck. Most people learn skills for one reason: to become employable. They study, train, and practice so they can qualify for a role that pays them a salary. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's practical, but it's also incomplete. Because when your skills are built exclusively for employment, they benefit only one customer, your employer. And when you have only one customer, you have no leverage. The moment that customer stops needing you, your income evaporates. The modern economy punishes that kind of concentration and rewards those who know how to make their skills serve many. When you look at people who break out of the salary trap without winning a lottery, inheriting wealth, or taking extraordinary risks, there's a pattern. They don't just work for companies, they make their skills work for them. They learn how to scale what they know. They learn how to package their knowledge, apply it across multiple markets, or use it to create value beyond a single transaction or a single paycheck. That shift transforms skills from employment tools into income engines. Here's something nobody tells young professionals. The marketplace pays differently, depending on how your skills scale. If your skills scale linearly, meaning they require your time for every dollar earned, the ceiling is low. But if your skills scale exponentially, meaning one effort can produce many returns, the ceiling moves dramatically. Teaching something once, selling something multiple times, licensing something, documenting something, automating something, or publishing something are forms of exponential scaling. You do the work once, the value continues to circulate. Companies already understand this principle. They don't hand out software one copy at a time. They build it once and distribute it endlessly. They don't train one employee at a time. They build standardized systems. They don't sell one product to one person. They build brand ecosystems. And yet employees rarely ask, how can I apply this logic to my own skill set? Instead, they settle for a single-use version of their talent and wonder why the financial upside is so limited. The good news is that nearly every skill can be expanded beyond employment if approached creatively. A designer can freelance, teach design, create templates, build courses, or license artwork. A marketer can consult, build campaigns, write books, create frameworks, or develop training for businesses. A software developer can take contract projects, build apps, create tools, or automate workflows for others. Even skills considered non-business scale surprisingly well. Fitness trainers create programs, chefs create recipe content, teachers build learning resources. No skill is disqualified, only unexpanded. The reason more people don't do this is not a lack of ability, but a lack of imagination. When you grow up in a system that trains you to be useful to companies, you naturally view your value through the lens of employment. You ask, who will hire me, instead of who needs what I know. Those two questions lead to very different lives. One makes you dependent on HR departments. The other makes you dependent on demand in the marketplace. And demand is bigger, broader, and more forgiving than corporate hiring processes. Another reason is fear. People are terrified. They are not expert enough to offer anything beyond their job. But expertise is not the requirement. Usefulness is. The market doesn't ask, are you the best in the world? It asks, can you help me solve my problem? If the answer is yes, you have value. Most profitable businesses are not built by world champions. They're built by competent individuals who learned how to distribute their value widely. Scaling your skills doesn't mean quitting your job or burning bridges. Quite the opposite. It means diversifying your identity. It means becoming someone who doesn't rely on a single institution to validate or compensate them. When your skills serve multiple channels, your relationship with work changes. You negotiate differently. You choose differently. You walk into meetings with confidence instead of anxiety. Not because you are fearless, but because you have options, and options are the real currency of freedom. When you can take your skills into the marketplace independently, you stop begging for raises. You stop praying for promotions. You stop tolerating toxic environments because you no longer need to. Scaling your skills turns you from a replaceable employee into a value creator with leverage. And once you experience that leverage, it becomes very clear how small the world feels when your talent is limited to a single paycheck. Chapter 9. Stop confusing hard work with progress. Hard work is one of the most celebrated virtues in society. From a young age, we're taught that working hard is the path to success, respect, and dignity. Teachers tell students to study hard. Employers tell staff to work hard. And parents tell their children that hard work will eventually pay off. And to be fair, hard work is important. There is no scenario in which laziness produces excellence. But here's the trap. Hard work by itself doesn't guarantee advancement. Hard work without direction becomes exhaustion. Hard work without leverage becomes stagnation. And hard work inside the wrong system becomes a lifetime of movement with no real progress. The salary trap thrives on this misunderstanding. It convinces people that effort is the metric that matters most. So employees do exactly what they've been conditioned to do. They show up early, they stay late, they sacrifice weekends, they volunteer for extra projects, they become dependable. And while the company benefits tremendously from this dependability, the workers rarely receive proportional rewards. They assume the system will recognize their dedication and compensate accordingly. But systems don't reward sacrifice. They reward value, leverage, and results. Effort is a cost. Value is an output. Look at how compensation structures actually work. Hourly workers earn by time. Salaried workers earn for roles. Executives earn for decisions. Owners earn for leverage. The gap between these categories is not about effort, but about what the effort produces. A janitor can work harder than a CEO. A nurse can endure more stress than an investor. A line cook can put in more physical labor than a tech founder. Effort makes the world run, but effort doesn't determine who benefits the most from that work. The market rewards outputs, not inputs. It rewards impact, not hours. This is why people often feel stuck, even though they're working harder than ever. They think the answer is to push more, grind more, hustle more. They think progress is a simple equation: more effort equals more success. But that's only true when the effort is attached to leverage. Without leverage, more effort only creates more fatigue. You can paddle faster in a canoe, but if the river is flowing in the opposite direction, speed won't get you where you want to go. At some point you have to ask a different question: is this effort moving me forward, or just keeping me afloat? The modern job environment subtly encourages busy work, because busy people rarely question the system. They are too occupied to reflect. They are too exhausted to plot an alternative path. Meetings, reports, deadlines, performance reviews, and administrative tasks create the illusion of progress, even when nothing truly changes. People confuse motion with momentum, activity with achievement. They live in cycles rather than trajectories. And cycles are comfortable because they repeat, while trajectories are uncomfortable because they require evolution. There is another layer to this: hard work inside employment is linear. You work an hour, you get paid for an hour. You work a year, you get paid for a year. The output stops when the input stops. This means that hard work alone cannot generate compounding effects. Without compounding, wealth creation is extremely slow. With compounding, wealth creation accelerates dramatically. Investors understand this instinctively. Business owners understand this. Creators understand this, but employees are rarely taught to think in these terms. They are trained to believe that raises replace compounding. They don't. Raises maintain dependency. The solution isn't to work less, or to reject effort. The solution is to aim effort strategically. Hard work must evolve into smart work, and smart work must evolve into leveraged work. Leveraged work is where one action can produce multiple outcomes. One creation can produce multiple sales. One skill can serve multiple customers. One decision can generate multiple returns. This is the secret that pulls people out of the salary trap. Not talent, not luck, not privilege, but leverage applied to effort. To make that leap, you must first detach your self-worth from labor itself. Many people subconsciously equate discipline with suffering. They believe if something doesn't feel difficult, it must not be valuable. This is a damaging belief. Value is not determined by pain tolerance. The world does not pay you more because you struggle. It pays you more because you create results that matter. There are people who earn by solving problems, and people who earn by enduring them. Both work hard, but only one moves forward. The truth is simple: you are allowed to want your effort to count. You are allowed to want your work to compound. You are allowed to pursue progress, not just productivity. Hard work builds character, but leveraged work builds freedom. And if you can learn to blend both, you stop living life in circles and start moving in straight lines toward a future you actually chose. Chapter 10. Unlearn the schooling that makes you obedient. School teaches many useful things: reading, writing, arithmetic, basic knowledge, and structured thinking. But alongside those benefits, it also quietly installs a set of behaviors that prepare students not for independence but for compliance. Sit still, follow instructions, ask for permission. Don't question authority. Don't make mistakes. Wait your turn. Do what the system expects, and you will be rewarded with grades, approval, and eventually a job. This conditioning may have made sense in an era when stable factory jobs were abundant and obedience was valuable to industry. But the economy has evolved. The problem is that the schooling mindset has not. The purpose of modern schooling was never to create entrepreneurs, inventors, or independent thinkers. It was to produce reliable workers, people who show up on time, behave predictably, follow rules, complete tasks, and never wonder whether the system itself deserves to be challenged. And the system still benefits from these traits today. Corporations don't need millions of innovators. They need millions of employees who will trade time for money without disrupting the machine. School prepares you for that role exceptionally well. The tragedy is that students often internalize the idea that their intelligence and worth are defined by external validation. Good grades mean you are smart, obedient, and capable. Bad grades mean you are careless, lazy, or not enough. This binary measurement carries over into adulthood. Many employees wait for their manager to tell them whether they're doing well. They wait for the company to approve their promotion. They wait for someone to approve their ideas. They wait for permission to advance. In school, you need permission to go to the bathroom. In adulthood, people unconsciously expect the same permission for bigger decisions like career changes, creative pursuits, or entrepreneurial ventures. Another harmful inheritance from schooling is the fear of mistakes. In school, mistakes are punished. They lower your grade, they embarrass you, and they separate you from the successful students. But in real life, mistakes are how you learn. Mistakes are how you discover what works. Mistakes are how you iterate, pivot, and grow. Entrepreneurs fail constantly. Investors lose money. Creators release things that flop before releasing things that work. The marketplace rewards those who experiment. Meanwhile, schooling rewards those who avoid failure and repeat what has been taught. When you are trained to avoid mistakes, you are trained to avoid innovation. School also conditions students to believe that the correct path is linear. First grade, second grade, third grade, diploma, college, job, retirement. One step after another, one level after another. Life is presented as a staircase. But real life does not unfold in a straight upward line. It moves sideways, backwards, diagonally, and unexpectedly. Careers shift, industries collapse, skill demands change, and opportunities appear outside the staircase entirely. The people who adapt fastest are rarely the ones who were best at memorizing information. They are the ones who were willing to unlearn old assumptions and learn new ones quickly. Another subtle but powerful element of schooling is competition. Students are ranked against each other for the benefit of institutions that need a filtering mechanism. But competition tells people that success is scarce. It teaches them to compare rather than collaborate, to protect rather than share, and to judge their performance relative to someone else's timeline rather than their own potential. In adulthood, this creates individuals who are deeply concerned with looking successful instead of becoming free. They buy status symbols rather than assets, because status was how success was measured for most of their development. Perhaps the most damaging internalization of all is the idea that knowledge comes from external authorities. In school, information flows from teacher to student. Students are not encouraged to question, investigate, or challenge the source. As adults, many continue to believe that the answers to their life problems must come from experts, bosses, academics, or institutions. They rarely trust themselves to learn independently. Yet the most powerful learning in the modern era is self-directed. The internet has democratized knowledge. Platforms have democratized distribution. The only remaining bottleneck is self-belief. Unlearning schooling does not mean rejecting education. Education is a lifelong advantage. But education and schooling are not the same thing. Schooling ends, education never does. The modern world rewards those who take responsibility for their own learning. Those who treat knowledge as a tool rather than a certificate. Those who understand that curiosity produces more opportunity than compliance ever could. If the salary trap thrives on obedience, then freedom thrives on self-directed learning. To break out of the conditioning, you must give yourself permission to ask different questions. You must allow yourself to experiment. You must embrace mistakes. You must redefine success away from grades, titles and approval, and toward ownership, autonomy, and leverage. That shift rewires the mind from being a student of the system to being a builder within it. And once that transformation begins, you will never again feel comfortable waiting for permission to design your own life. Chapter 11. Face the fear of leaving the known. Fear is one of the most powerful forces shaping human behavior, especially when it comes to career decisions. People don't stay in jobs they dislike because they lack talent or imagination. They stay because leaving means stepping into the unknown, and the unknown is terrifying. The known may be boring, unfulfilling, or even miserable, but it is familiar. Familiarity creates a sense of psychological safety. It allows you to predict tomorrow. It allows you to plan. It allows you to feel in control, even when you're not. That illusion of control is often more comfortable than the possibility of freedom. When you think about leaving a job, a flood of fears appear almost instantly. What if I fail? What if I can't find anything better? What if my family judges me? What if this is irresponsible? What if I lose the little stability I have? Notice how every fear points toward loss. The mind is built to avoid loss far more aggressively than it seeks gain. This is why so many people settle. They choose the known discomfort over the unknown possibility. They choose survival over growth. But everything meaningful in life, new skills, new environments, new identities, new income streams, lives on the other side of the unknown. Fear also feeds on timing. People tell themselves they will make a change someday, just not now. After the promotion, after the wedding, after the kids grow up, after the market improves, after I save a little more, after things calm down. The problem is that life doesn't calm down. There will always be uncertainty somewhere. Waiting for the perfect moment is the fastest way to lose decades. The longer someone waits, the heavier their responsibilities become, the scarier the unknown becomes, and the more attractive the comfort zone appears. Time doesn't make the leap easier. It makes the cage stronger. The workplace itself amplifies these fears. A job becomes more than income. It becomes identity. When someone introduces themselves, they often lead with their role. I'm a lawyer. I'm an engineer. I'm a manager. Titles replace the deeper question of who you are. And when identity fuses with employment, leaving feels like erasing yourself. If I'm not this anymore, who am I? That existential discomfort keeps millions in roles they have long outgrown. Identity is one of the most overlooked forms of attachment in the modern economy. Social pressure intensifies it further. Society praises linear progression and stability. Risk is often labeled reckless. Ambition outside the system is labeled unrealistic. Entrepreneurship is called dangerous. Creativity is called impractical. And because humans are social creatures, we internalize these judgments. Many would rather endure decades of quiet dissatisfaction than endure a few months of external misunderstanding. But here's the irony: the same people who discourage risk admire those who succeed because of it. The world fears boldness and celebrates boldness at the same time. Facing the fear of the unknown does not mean you must leap blindly. It means you must stop treating uncertainty as a threat. Uncertainty is not the enemy. It is the birthplace of possibility. Every major turning point in life involves uncertainty. Starting a relationship, moving to a new city, launching a project, learning a new skill, making an investment. We accept uncertainty in every domain except our careers, where we cling to control even when it suffocates us. But the truth is simple: no one grows in environments that offer only certainty. There's a practical side to this as well. The unknown becomes less frightening when you build a bridge to it instead of jumping off a cliff. A bridge is built through preparation, learning skills, testing ideas on the side, creating alternative income streams, building a network, saving runway, and expanding optionality. Optionality reduces fear because it restores agency. When you know you have options, the unknown becomes less of a gamble and more of an exploration. The goal is not reckless quitting. The goal is to stop living as if the known is the only safe path. Because in many cases, the known is not safe at all. Staying in a job that limits your growth is dangerous. Staying in an industry being disrupted is dangerous. Staying dependent on one employer for survival is dangerous. The danger just feels less visible because it unfolds slowly over time. Fear will always exist. The question is whether it governs you or informs you. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" ask, "What if staying is the bigger failure?" Instead of asking, "What if it doesn't work?" ask, "What if it works better than I imagine?" When you face the fear of leaving the known, you begin to trade certainty for possibility. And possibility is where a self-designed life begins. Chapter 12. Don't let a high salary trap you. A high salary is one of the most seductive traps in the modern economy. It feels like success. It feels like progress. It feels like proof that the system is rewarding you. Society reinforces this by treating high earners with respect, admiration, and even envy. People assume that a high salary equals wealth, security, and freedom. But in many cases, the opposite becomes true. The higher the salary climbs, the harder it becomes to walk away. The golden handcuffs tighten, and what looks like success from the outside becomes dependency on the inside. High salaries are rarely handed out without strategic intent. Companies know that paying someone generously creates loyalty. Not loyalty rooted in love or passion, but loyalty rooted in fear of loss. When the paycheck becomes too good to give up, employees will tolerate workloads, stress levels, and conditions they would have refused at lower pay. They will sacrifice health, time, relationships, and personal ambition, because the alternative, starting over, taking a pay cut, or exploring something less familiar, feels unbearable. The salary doesn't just pay for labor, it buys obedience. There's another layer to this trap: lifestyle inflation. When income jumps, lifestyle usually follows. People upgrade their home, their car, their vacations, their wardrobe, their dining habits, their social circle, even their expectations. Suddenly the salary isn't just income, it's identity. It becomes the floor required to maintain the life they've built. And floors are harder to lower than ceilings are to raise. Someone who once lived comfortably on modest income may now feel financially strained, despite earning triple or quadruple what they used to. Not because they don't earn enough, but because they constructed a lifestyle that requires constant feeding. This is why many high earners are just as trapped as low earners, sometimes more so. A person earning a modest salary can pivot, downsize, experiment, and explore new paths without catastrophic consequences. But a person earning a high salary with large financial obligations can't. They are locked in. They must sustain the income to sustain the image, and images are expensive. The tragedy is that a high salary can create the illusion of wealth without producing any real wealth. Wealth is not measured by consumption, it's measured by ownership, optionality, and time. A person with a high salary but no assets, no passive income, no investments, and no freedom to walk away is not wealthy. They are simply highly paid. The difference is enormous. Because wealth buys independence, a salary buys dependency. Another psychological trick, embedded in the high salary trap, is the concept of sunk cost. When someone spends years climbing the corporate ladder, earning degrees, and sacrificing for advancement, they feel they must continue because they've invested so much already. Why throw it away, they ask. But clinging to sunk costs doesn't recover them, it just prolongs stagnation. People protect the career they built, even if it no longer aligns with the life they want. Companies further reinforce the trap through benefits packages, healthcare, retirement matches, stock plans, bonuses, and perks are presented as generosity. But they are also tools for dependency. When someone depends on their employer for medical care, future savings, or family stability, they become less willing to leave. The idea of abandoning these benefits feels irresponsible, so instead of leaving, they stay, and staying becomes the default, not because it's fulfilling, but because it's safe. The core insight here is simple. A salary is not freedom. Freedom is the ability to walk away without fear. Freedom is the ability to choose your time. Freedom is the ability to decline opportunities that don't align with your values. Many high earners lack these freedoms. They are rich in income, but poor in autonomy. The goal is not to reject high salaries. Earning well is not the problem. Being dependent on that single source of income is. The solution is to turn high income into high leverage. Use the extra income to build assets, not liabilities. Use it to invest, to create alternative income streams, to build skills that scale, to buy back your time, and to expand your optionality. When a high salary funds a path toward independence, it becomes a tool for freedom. When it funds consumption, it becomes a cage. The real test is this: if your employer suddenly ceased to exist, how long could you maintain your life without panic? How long could you take to think, explore, or rebuild? If the answer is not long, then the salary may be high, but the freedom is low. And in the long run, freedom outweighs numbers on a paycheck. Chapter 13. Calculate the opportunities you're not taking. Every decision you make has a visible cost and an invisible cost. The visible cost is easy to measure. The hours you work, the tasks you complete, the money you earn, the bills you pay. The invisible cost is much harder to see. The paths you didn't explore, the skills you didn't learn, the projects you didn't start, the relationships you didn't build, and the opportunities you didn't pursue. Inside the salary trap, people are trained to focus exclusively on visible costs, because visible costs justify staying where they are. Invisible costs, however, are often the ones that shape a person's long-term freedom. When someone chooses a stable salary over an uncertain opportunity, they tell themselves they are being responsible, and in some cases, they are. But responsibility without reflection can turn into stagnation. The opportunity cost of staying in the same place for 10 years is not measured by the salary earned. It's measured by the skills that could have been developed, the risk tolerances that could have been cultivated, the industries that could have been entered, and the income streams that could have been built. The opportunity you don't take has a price. You just don't get the receipt. Consider someone who has been in the same job for a decade. They've mastered their tasks, built rapport with management, and learned how to operate smoothly within the system. On the surface, this looks like progress. But what happened during those 10 years? Did they learn how to sell? Did they learn how to build? Did they learn how to experiment? Did they learn how to create leverage? If not, then the decade may have increased comfort, but decreased optionality. And optionality, the ability to choose, is one of the most valuable currencies in the modern world. Opportunity cost also applies to energy. People often say they are too tired after work to build something of their own. This sounds like a reasonable excuse, until you calculate the cost of that fatigue. If 10 years pass without building anything outside the job, that is 10 years without equity, without compounding, without ownership, and without leverage. The salary paid for time, but it did not pay for potential. Potential shrinks when it is unused, and once potential shrinks, the cost of action increases, making the cycle even harder to break. One of the most damaging beliefs in the salary system is the assumption that stability equals safety. But stability itself carries an opportunity cost. When you choose stability today, you are often choosing vulnerability tomorrow. Industries evolve, automation expands, companies restructure, and technology erases entire job categories. The opportunity cost of not adapting is unemployment in a market that no longer needs what you know. Many workers don't calculate this risk because the danger is delayed, not immediate. There's a second category of opportunity cost that people ignore: relational opportunities. New environments introduce new networks. New networks introduce new perspectives. New perspectives introduce new opportunities. Staying in the same professional environment for too long means interacting with the same people, absorbing the same beliefs, and repeating the same conversations. That stagnation isn't always visible, but it limits exposure to the kinds of ideas that trigger transformation. Many people's lives don't change because their environments don't change. Now let's explore the psychological side of opportunity cost. Humans are wired to regret losses far more than missed gains. Losing $1,000 hurts more than missing out on making $1,000. This bias makes people cling to what they have, even when letting go could lead to much larger upside. Economists call this loss aversion, but in everyday life, it looks like fear disguised as prudence. People don't ask, "What could I gain?" They ask, "What could I lose?" But progress requires flipping that question. To calculate opportunity cost properly, you must ask a different set of questions. If I stayed here another 5 years, what would it cost me? What skills will I not develop? What future will I be unable to access? What markets will I miss? What version of myself will I never meet? These questions don't guarantee dramatic action, but they prevent sleepwalking through decades. The most successful individuals, whether in business, creativity, or personal growth, are obsessive about opportunity cost. They ask, "What am I giving up by not doing this?" They treat inaction as a risk, not a default. They understand that the biggest risk is not trying and failing, but staying and shrinking. Because in a world that changes rapidly, staying still is rarely neutral. It is often regress disguised as stability. The salary trap convinces people to optimize for predictability. Real freedom asks you to optimize for potential, and potential lives in the choices you haven't taken yet. When you learn to calculate the opportunities you're not taking, you stop measuring your life by what you earn, and start measuring it by what you could become. Chapter 14. Take back your time, power, and ownership. Time, power, and ownership are the three pillars of a free life. When you control your time, you control your schedule. When you control your power, you control your decisions. When you control your ownership, you control your financial destiny. But in the salary system, these three pillars are systematically transferred away from the individual and into the hands of employers, not maliciously, not violently, but quietly, through routines, contracts, and expectations that feel normal, simply because everyone around you lives the same way. The most visible loss is time. A full-time job consumes the majority of a person's waking hours. Commuting, meetings, deadlines, and administrative tasks fill the day. Weekends become recovery periods. Vacations must be requested and rationed. Life is divided into small blocks, where freedom must fit into the cracks, rather than become the foundation. When time is controlled by another, your life becomes scheduled instead of lived, and a scheduled life rarely leads to self-directed purpose. Time is not just hours, it is the container inside which all possibilities must fit. When the container is full, possibility shrinks. Power is the second pillar people surrender without noticing. In the workplace, decisions are rarely your own. Someone else decides what work matters, how performance is measured, what goals should be prioritized, who advances, who gets raises, who gets cut, and who remains in place. You may influence these decisions through competence and effort, but you do not control them. The more you rely on a company for identity, income, health, and stability, the less power you possess. You become reactive, responding to tasks, expectations and deadlines rather than shaping a life voluntarily. This is not a failure of character, but a structural reality of dependency. Ownership is the third and most important pillar. Ownership is what produces wealth. Ownership is what produces leverage. Ownership is what produces freedom. When you are paid a salary, you are renting out your time. When you own something, a business, a product, an asset, intellectual property, real estate, or equity, your money works independently of your hours. Ownership allows value to compound. Salaries reset every Monday. Ownership accumulates. This is why two people can work equally hard for 20 years and end up in completely different universes. One earned wages, the other built ownership. To take back time, power, and ownership, you first have to recognize that no one will hand them back voluntarily. Employers have no incentive to give you more time than necessary, more power than useful, or ownership that creates independence. Their incentive is for you to remain productive, consistent, and replaceable. That's not cruelty, that's economic efficiency, which means the responsibility to change the game lies with you, not the system. Reclaiming time begins with intentional allocation, not dramatic quitting or radical life changes, but carving out consistent hours for building the life you say you want. People dream of freedom, yet fill their evenings with distraction. They wake up tired, go to work, come home exhausted, and numb themselves until tomorrow. To take back time, you must interrupt that cycle. You must convert a fraction of your schedule into creation instead of consumption. 1 hour a day of creation compounds into 365 hours a year, enough to build skills, start projects, test ideas, and expand optionality. Ownership is built in these margins, not in spare fantasies of someday. Reclaiming power is about shifting from employee identity to value identity. Employees ask for tasks, value creators ask for problems to solve. Employees wait to be chosen, value creators choose themselves. When you understand the value you bring, you become less afraid of leaving environments that do not recognize it. Power is not loud, power is choice. The power to say yes, the power to say no, and the power to walk away without panic. Reclaiming ownership demands patience and discipline. Ownership grows slowly at first, then explosively later. It begins with learning a skill that can produce value outside the workplace, then transforming that skill into a product, service or asset that multiplies. It may feel inefficient in the early stages, like investing in something that isn't paying off. But this is exactly why most people don't do it. They are trained to expect compensation immediately. Ownership rarely works on the timeline of salaries, but the payoff is exponentially higher once momentum forms. Freedom is not obtained by accident. It is constructed. It is engineered. It is built intentionally through choices that prioritize leverage over comfort. When you take back your time, power, and ownership, you stop living life in response to external demands and start designing life according to internal purpose. The salary trap may control the first chapter of your life, but ownership writes the rest. Chapter 15. Build systems that make money without you. The ultimate escape from the salary trap does not come from working harder, climbing higher, or even earning more. It comes from building systems. A system is anything that continues to create value without requiring your constant time, presence, or energy. Salaries pay you for effort. Systems pay you for structure. Systems convert knowledge, assets, or processes into ongoing results. And once you experience income that doesn't depend on daily labor, your relationship with work, money, and freedom changes permanently. Most people are trained to think in terms of activities rather than systems. They ask, "What do I need to do to earn more?" when they should be asking, "What can I build that will keep earning even when I'm not doing anything?" Activities stop when you stop. Systems continue. This is why wealthy individuals focus on building mechanisms instead of tasks. They don't just sell products, they build brands. They don't just complete projects, they create processes. They don't just work for money, they build channels that turn work into assets. There are many types of systems: creative systems, sales systems, investment systems, distribution systems, technological systems, content systems, and business systems. A consultant who teaches 10 clients per month is performing labor. A consultant who records a course once and sells it indefinitely has a system. A trader who manually buys and sells assets every day is performing labor. A trader who uses automated strategies or long-term investment vehicles has a system. A designer who produces custom work for one employer is performing labor. A designer who sells templates, products, or licenses is scaling through systems. The beauty of systems is that they multiply results without multiplying effort. Early in the process, building a system may feel inefficient. It requires planning, experimenting, adjusting, and often upfront time without immediate payoff. This is where most people get discouraged. They abandon the build because they are conditioned to expect transactional rewards. Salaries reinforce this mindset. Show up, get paid, repeat. But systems operate on a different timeline. First you build, then you benefit. The delay is not a flaw. It is the source of compounding. Compounding is what makes the future larger than the present. Systems also create separation between life and labor. When your income depends on a system instead of a schedule, you gain something the salary model cannot provide: flexibility. You can travel, you can rest, you can think, you can experiment. You can invest time into long-term work instead of short-term survival. Flexibility is not a luxury. It is fuel for breakthroughs. Some of the best ideas emerge when you are not drowning in daily tasks. Systems buy time, and time buys perspective. One of the biggest psychological barriers to building systems is the misconception that it's only for the gifted, the lucky, or the extraordinary. But systems do not require genius. They require structure. They require repetition. They require willingness to package value in ways that can scale. The world is full of ordinary individuals who became extraordinary simply because they built mechanisms that outperformed their hours. Meanwhile, talented individuals who never built systems remain trapped by their own excellence. They are too valuable in the labor market to escape it. Another barrier is perfectionism. Many people hesitate to build systems because they want the structure to be flawless before launching it. This kills momentum. Systems grow through iteration, not theory. Version 1 is supposed to be rough. Version 2 is supposed to be better. Version 10 is where mastery begins. The marketplace rewards those who release and refine, not those who endlessly prepare. There is also a misconception that systems must be massive to be worthwhile, but small systems are often the gateway. A social media channel can become a distribution system. A newsletter can become a communication system. A simple set of templates or tools can become a product system. A rental property can become a financial system. A portfolio can become an investment system. What matters is not the size, it's the compounding. The transition from salary to system is the transition from consumer to creator, from participant to architect. It is the process of shifting from working in your life to working on your life. And once you start thinking this way, you begin to see opportunity everywhere. Every problem becomes a potential product. Every solution becomes a potential asset. Every repetition becomes a potential automation. Systems teach you that freedom is not given, it is built. When you build systems that make money without you, you no longer have to ask for raises. You no longer have to trade time for survival. You no longer have to postpone life until retirement. Systems collapse the timeline between effort and reward. They allow you to enjoy today while still preparing for tomorrow. And in a world where the economic game is stacked in favor of those who own rather than those who labor, systems are not optional, they are the exit. Conclusion. The modern economy is brilliant at making the comfortable feel permanent. It gives you predictable paychecks, familiar routines, professional titles, and just enough upward mobility to keep you loyal. It encourages hard work, rewards reliability, and praises stability. From the outside, this looks like a well-designed life. But beneath the surface, millions of people sense something missing. They sense the trade-off between safety and freedom. They sense the difference between earning a living and owning their life. And that feeling is not a mistake. It's a signal. The salary trap was never about money alone. It was about control. When your income depends on a single employer, when your time is scheduled by someone else, when your identity is shaped by a title, when your choices are restricted by debt, and when your future depends on a retirement plan that may or may not arrive, you are not in charge, you are participating. Participation is not bad, it can even be honorable, but participation without ownership eventually leaves you wondering why decades of effort never translated into autonomy. The truth is that freedom was never going to be handed out as a benefit or included in an offer.